If we don't change habits, we will continue to get what we've always got.
Brothers of the world, because brother, you need the world. Brothers of the world.
This may seem like an error, but it is an absolute gospel truth. AV, play this clip from our recent message.
Right now, God's fixing to release His glory on this house. He's going to release it to the rich and the poor. If you're rich, you're going to be richer. If you're poor, you ain't going to be rich. If you're poor, you're not going to be poor. That's what I meant to say. I didn't say that at all, did I? That just, don't tell nobody this happened.
Now, this was from a bishop that we had speak here about 3-4 weeks ago. I was out of town, but I was watching the live stream when I heard that. And when I heard it, I instantly knew he was operating under the anointing and the flow of the Holy Spirit. I instantly knew he was telling the truth. And today I want to talk to you about how not to be poor. What he said was, he says, the rich are going to get richer, and the poor not going to be rich. That is a spiritual and natural truth. I preached a message on that years ago. I don't like it, but it is real. Let me tell you what Jesus said about that. Jesus said, essentially, that to them who hath, whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. That's the rich get richer. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. And these are the words of Jesus. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. The rich get richer, and the poor get poor. So I want to talk to you today about how not to be poor. What the speaker a few weeks ago spoke under the flow of the Holy Spirit was absolutely true. The rich are going to get richer, and the poor are not going to be rich. What Jesus said is the poor are going to get poorer, because he says what they have will be taken from them. This is a spiritual law. Now, I don't like it, and if you don't like it, don't get mad at me. You have to get mad at Jesus. He said it, not me. It is a spiritual law. It is a natural law. In science, it's called Markovnikov's law. It has to do with hydrogen atoms and the tendency of them to gravitate to other. It basically says to them who has gets. So if you got it, you can get more. If you don't have it, you lose what you have. That's what it says in a nutshell. It's a scientific principle. It is an economic principle. We had a situation dealing with the pandemic, and you know what happened? Those who were abundantly wealthy got richer. Those who didn't have it, they got a stimulus check, but because of mentality, they spent it all. So they ended up in worse shape than they were before they started. So my goal today, because I cannot change the principle. That's one of the things you no need of fussing about it. Ain't no need of fussing, but them rich folk, you need to change sides. Don't fuss about the principle, because you cannot change the principle. The rich will get richer and the poor will get poor. That's not modern, that's ancient. It has always been, and it will always be. So you got to switch sides. So I want to talk to you today about how not to be poor. You can't change the principle. You can change your position. How not to be poor. My father, my earthly father, he used to say this multiple times to me. He says, son, I have been broke many times, but I have never been poor. Because broke is a temporary condition. Poor is a permanent state of mind. And he drilled that into me. Sometimes you can go through some ups and downs and you down. All your money gone. Not only is all your money gone, you in debt. And you don't know how you going to get out. If you poor, you never get out. You live and die in the wilderness. But if you have a rich mentality, it's temporary. And you are constantly figuring out, how do I change my circumstance? How do I get out of this? Let me give you the first key. If you're going to change what you got to change what you've been doing. That's right. Do you understand that? In that message that the bishop spoke, he said, if you look at your 5 closest friends, and if they're in the same shape you in, you need to change friends, or else 10 years from now, you'll be in your same shape with them same 5 group of friends. He said, your life depends on the people you associate with and the books that you read. Now, it depends on more than that, but that's a real solid principle. So first thing is, they're habits. And if you want to change habits, you got to understand, first of all, I got a habit that's not good. Another one of the principles is this. Poor people got big TVs. Rich folk have big libraries. They're different. Because they're different even where you spend and how you spend your time. If you spend your time doing nothing that produces nothing, watching TV just doesn't produce anything. Matter of fact, it takes you down. Because you're sitting up on the couch, you're getting fatter and fatter, lazier and lazier. Entertainment with amusement. A means not, muse means to think. So you're sitting there, nothing but amusing yourself. Not moving, not thinking. Your body is getting in worse shape, your mind is getting in worse shape, and because the vast majority of stuff on television is negative, your spirit is getting in worse shape. All of it is getting poor. And poor is not just about money. At all. Poor is not just about money. There are 4 major areas of life: finance, relationship, health, and spirit. And you can be poor in one or all of those areas. So I want you to understand, you have the ability to change from being poor to being rich. But that begins with the mindset. Don't think, I'm going to change from being poor to being, I'm going to hit the lottery. Do you know that the vast majority of people who win the lottery, you check with them a year later and they're less happy after they won it than before because they don't have the other 3 in shape. Don't have spirit in shape, don't have relationship in shape, and don't have the body in shape. So even when they come into big gobs of money, they're not happy a year later. So money is not the key to rich or poor. So I want to change your mindset. 2 primary things. Number 1, change your habit. And number 2, change how you view where you are. Let's start with that second one. Change how you view where you are. Those of you who follow me on social media, you know I travel all over the world, just like we spent the past month in walking through Portugal. And I've been to all kinds of countries. I've seen all kinds of things. The U.S., I don't think it's the best country on earth, but we got way more stuff than the vast majority of countries on this earth. Most people in this world earn less than $2 per day. And they struggle with having clean water, clean shelter, and enough food. The Bible says, having ye food and raiment, food and clothing, be ye therewith content. And I have seen this all over the world. As long as the people are not hungry, they're happier than the folk in the U.S. And you can feel it. You can feel it. And they don't have, you've got, let me tell you how crazy this is to the average person who lives in most of these countries. You have a house for your car that's better than most of their houses. And I've been there. I've been to some of the huts. I've been inside where there is no linoleum or wood. It's dirt. And all of you all park your cars on concrete. The house for your car is better than the houses of 70% of the folk on this earth. You turn on you use the bathroom in water that's cleaner than 50% of the folk on earth. If they could just get your toilet water, they'd be happy. But they can't. So you have to travel and you have to see to understand how rich you are materially. Food, having ye food and raiment. Do you know the biggest problem in ghetto neighborhoods in terms of health? The biggest problem, what is it? Obesity. You got more food than you can eat. So you're walking around and you got all this on you, and other folk are starving. Now, you may be malnourished, but you're not starving. Big difference. So we got all this stuff. Many of you, before you came to church today, you stood in front of a closet trying to figure out what you're going to wear that folk haven't seen. Do you understand that? You're standing in front of a closet trying to figure out what are you going to wear that folk haven't seen. So we live at a level of abundance that when you understand it in its relative sense, we have more stuff. And even if we don't have a fancy car, you may not have a $100,000 car, but you're riding on a $700,000 bus. Now you may say, well, that ain't nothing. You go to some of these other countries and ride on the bus, and then you will appreciate our buses. Go to some of these countries and ride. The folk hanging off the back of the bus, they hanging out of the window. You see 7 folk on a motorcycle. I'm serious. The whole family be on a motorcycle. Be 7 folk on a motorcycle. I'm not exaggerating. This is real. So we've got you drive in America. Go down the street, go down the expressway. 90% of the cars got one person sitting in them. 90% of the cars. So we got 90% of the cars got one person sitting in them. 70% of the folks sitting in the cars got too much weight on them. So we got all this stuff. And then you got the big problem, most of it is closet space. Not lack of clothes, closet space. Got more clothes, got more shoes, got more stuff than we even know what to do with. So we're loaded down with this stuff. But see, the mentality that keeps us, this country and its economic engine runs off of consumerism. They must get you to keep buying and buying and buying because that is what runs the economy. Rich folk don't buy that much, they invest. They depend on everybody else to do all the buying. So they make it where you are dissatisfied with what you got. But you got to have a new car every 3-4 years. Ain't nothing wrong with your car. The cars these days last 15, 20 years now. But you got to have a new car every 3 or 4 years. All because you worried about, well, my next, they got a new car. And they're going to look at my car, and they know my car. I done had this car for 3-4 years. They're going to think I'm not doing well. And you're trying to impress folk who don't give a hoot about you. This is a poor mentality, and that's often the difference. There used to be a newspaper called The Challenger, and it has it as headline, we must sell instead of buy, or else we remain a beggar race. So first thing you got to do is you got to understand that you're not poor. That's the first reality, because that's why we got so many designer clothes. We got to put somebody else's name on us to make us feel good. Do you know when those stimulus checks came out? I remember I was at our show in New Orleans. They have a mall there, and it's real high-end mall. and they had this Louis Vuitton store. I can't remember whether it was Louis Vuitton or Gucci because I don't go in any of them. I can't remember which one it was. But there was a line coming out of the door. And 90% of the folk in the line were black. And I knew why they were in the line, because they got a stimulus check. And I'm looking at them saying to myself, if you can't buy a Gucci or a Louis Vuitton without a stimulus check, you have no business with you got no business with that. Then I went in Walmart, all the TVs gone. So when you see, this is why they gave you stimulus checks, to stimulate the economy, because you couldn't get a stimulus check if you earned over a certain amount of money. I couldn't get a stimulus check because they knew I wasn't going to go out and spend my stimulus check. See, they knew they needed to give the stimulus check to the folk who were going to go out and spend it right away. So they gave it to the folk they knew. These folk, once that stimulus check got in there, they couldn't wait to go spend it. And they spent it. That's poor. That's a poor mentality. And that mentality will always keep you broke. That's mentality. Not condition, it's mentality. So we've got to, first of all, understand we're not poor relative. And then there's the second part. We got to change the habits. If we don't change habits, we will continue to get what we've always gotten. We have a class here that's the first 6 months of the year called Render My Money. It's absolutely free. It's at 7 p.m. on the first Friday. And there, Mr. Render teaches you how to budget, how to manage your money. He teaches you how to be rich. But most folk don't want to go through the class. They just want. I never will forget, there was this evangelist, and his slogan was "Money cometh." He said he saw a prosperity angel, and the prosperity angel came to him, and he had folk just pulling the lever. Money cometh, money. He had them writing it on the check. Money cometh, money cometh. He just had them all brainwashed that God was going to send them money, and they made no changes and no effort whatsoever. That is a poor mentality. That I'm just going to get it out of nowhere. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because miracles happen. We've had a miracle here like that. Miracles happen. But it was interesting that the miracle came to the very person who was doing the best with money stewardship. So the poor mentality expects for, God just going to give it to me. I'm just going to lay here and God just going to give it to me. Send it, Lord. Send it to me, Lord. Send it, Lord. Send it to me. That is a poor mentality. And it's not biblical. It's the sluggard mentality. And it's not that we don't work hard. Slaves worked hard. It's not that we don't work hard. We got to think hard. So if you are doing what everybody else is doing, you are going to get what everybody else is getting in all of those areas of life. And see, broke, the literal word, it means something that is fragmented and it is in pieces. And that's true with health, that's true with money, that's true with relationship, and that's true with spirit. And if you don't change a habit, some of y'all think, I just need to get me I need to get another wife, I need to get another husband. If you don't change your habits of what caused you to mess up with the first wife or the first husband or the first boyfriend or the first girl, you know some people had continual patterns. We've got Clayton and Natasha sitting here. They were in church on their, what anniversary was that, Clayton? 43rd? 43rd anniversary. Now, they were sitting in church on their 43rd anniversary. So they've been together that long, but it's not accidental. So if you have a history, and all of this stuff, if you got a history with your money of being constantly broke. And I've seen this with my employees in my company. I have had employees, and they would come to me every month. Mr. Bronner, I need to get an advance because I just need an advance because my bills. I would give them advance on their salary every month. Then the company went through a huge boom and their salary doubled. It literally doubled. About 3 months later, what do you think happened? Now they got twice as much money. Twice as much money. Mr. Bronner, I need an advance. Because the habits didn't change. They had the habit of spending every dime they got. And it makes no difference how much you earn. You can earn millions every day. We've got one of the big famous entertainers here. You know a lot of folk in that world. They made millions. And it doesn't matter. You can spend, you can just buy some of everything to just get ridiculous. I never will forget, Wayne Newton I watched a documentary. He was making at the time $250,000 a week. And he was in bankruptcy. And I used to say, how you go in bankruptcy making $250,000 a week? Same way you go in bankruptcy making $250 a week. Same way. The formula is identical. And my daddy had this. I got so many of these sayings from my father. Oh, my goodness. He said, if your upkeep exceeds your income, if your outflow exceeds your inflow, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Basically, if you spend more than you earn, you are going to remain poor. It's simple as so. These are some basic changes that we need to begin to make now, and it will change you. I've just had all these experiences through life. I remember once in our plant, we had brought in an investment advisor just to talk to the employees, and a young lady who worked on the line. She was a single mother. She had one child. She made close to minimum wage. And she said, Mr. Bronner, I have a little money I'd like to invest in, and I just want to get your advice on what to do with it. I said, well, how much you got? I thought she meant she had $300-400. She said, I got $30-something thousand. And this was 20 years ago. And I'm saying to myself, how you get 30-something? She said, you remember the story of the lady who was a washerwoman, never made more than minimum wage, but donated $150,000 to the college? And people ask her, you got all these kids, you never made this. How you? She said, I learned the power early of compound interest. So it wasn't money, it was mind and mentality and spirit and understanding. I don't spend everything I get. I save on a regular basis, and as a result, I may be washing clothes, I may be making minimum wage, but I am not poor. And she wasn't financially poor, but she never made much money. And you know that, grandma often used to always, grandma was never broke. Y'all know that? I don't know what kind of, but I know what kind of grandma I had. And grandma could go into she would go into the Twin Towers Bank and pull out some money. You understand what I mean? Grandma was never broke. And they didn't have education, didn't have all these fancy degrees. But they understood some basic principles. That you got to save, that you have to give, and you have to not be worried about trying to impress folk. And when you can just learn, it's a whole lot. I could do a whole series on this. I just don't have the time to do all of this, but it's basic. But it is a principle that is inviolate. The rich will get richer, and the poor will get poorer. You got to make a decision which side of the tracks you're going to be on. There'll always be. That's why Jesus says, the poor you will have with you always. And this is what Jesus said when you read. That same statement is in 3 different books of the Bible. He says this, the poor you will have with you always, but you will not always have me. What Jesus said is this. He said, look, you're going to have the poor with you all of the time. You're not ever going anywhere. But I'm with you right now, and you need to focus on me right now. That's what Jesus said. And this was after this lady had brought him this spikenard perfume to anoint his feet that was worth a year's wages. Super expensive perfume. And Judas said, we need to take this perfume and sell it and give it to the poor. Jesus, no, you don't. The poor you're going to always have. Right now, you need to focus on me. So before you focus on the money, you need to focus on Jesus. Because that's the spirit part. And some people get all this money and the spirit all shot. You all remember the Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was this big New York financier, had this big Ponzi scheme, cost folk billions. What most people didn't know about is Madoff Jr. Madoff Jr. committed suicide. But this is the point with Madoff Jr. He wasn't charged like his father. He was only under the shadow of his father. When Madoff Jr. committed suicide, he had $18.6 million. He wasn't broke. And $18.6 million will hold you a little bit. He was poor in spirit. He didn't know Jesus. And you go through some tough times with stuff happening. So you need to first focus on Jesus. It's so easy. I remember, 25 years ago, I walked in church. I was playing the song by the OJs. That's on my list to go see. For the love of money. And I started handing out $5 bills. In the last 25 years, it has still never been as much excitement in the church as it was with me handing out those $5 bills. I'm sorry to say it, but I don't care how much I preach. We've had evangelists come in and preach. There has never been as much excitement in the church as it was the night I came in playing for the love of money, handing everybody a $5 bill. Money is powerful. And often the reason that so many of the rich are in truth poor is because they don't have Jesus and they're focusing like Judas. See, Judas was the treasurer. He was the only one Jesus allowed to handle the money. And it messed up his spirit. So we need money without question. But it's only one of those four major areas. I never will forget, since I'm dealing with a lot of entertainment issues today, but it was the movie Ladies Sing the Blues. Diana Ross was over in Europe. She was playing Billie Holiday. And she was there in her hotel room by herself, and Billy D. Williams came and knocked on her door. And she wouldn't let him in. And I never will forget the line that Billy D. said. Success is nothing without someone you love to share it with. Powerful, powerful line. And it's true. A lot of these folk got all this money. They lonely. They lonely because it's lonely up at the top. And then you become paranoid because everybody after you. Yeah, you can get a lot of women, but then you got to, the women, you got to be just guarded, and they're after you, trying to get your money, trying to get pregnant, trying to do this, trying to frame you. So you can't be in peace. You just, when you got that kind of money, you got to put up so many walls. And if you don't already have somebody who loves you, you can't hardly get them with all that money. So often people with all this money, they're lonely. And I've just seen over and over and over and over, people think money solves all problems. The only problem money solves are money problems. But once you get all your bills paid and plenty of money in the bank, it's still plenty of other stuff. You got your relationship, not just with your romantic partner, you got relationship with your kids. And that's another issue. It's just hard. You got all this stuff to get all this stuff balanced, but when you got good relationships, when you feel good, when your bills are paid, and when you have a relationship with God, you're rich. And all of you, all of you have the ability to do all of that. You have the ability to change into being rich, but the poor will always be poor. Broke is a temporary condition, but poor is a permanent state of mind. So you got to change your mind. You got to change your mindset. First of all, recognize what you got, and then ask yourself, if you're not pleased with your position in the 4 areas, what am I going to change this? What am I going to change to change this? What am I going to change to change this? And if you don't set about doing it, you're going to keep getting the same thing you've been getting, except it's going to get worse. Well, Pastor, why is it going to get worse? Because you're going to get older. It's harder to get you somebody at 60 than it is at 26. It just is. Your body it's harder for your body to get back in shape at 60 than it is at 20. It just is. And then even to get a job or to start something new is harder with gray hair than it just is. Your energy not the same. So you've got to move on this thing now and make a decision now. I want to move to the other side of the tracks. I want to move from poorness or brokenness to any of those areas in life. And I want to be wealthy. I want to be abundantly living. I want to be without lack in any of those areas. And it's possible. No matter where you are, it's possible. Broke is a temporary condition. Poor is a permanent state of mind. Switch sides of the track if you want to move from poor to rich. I thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word. You can go to brothersoftheword.com and listen to this message or send it to a friend absolutely free of charge. Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. Going to ask George if he would now come up and...
Let's give him another round of applause. You know, for the last 5 or so years of my life, any space that I stepped into where somebody was speaking, whether there was somebody preaching, I was at a conference, I was in a class, anything of that nature, I would always be thinking in the back of my head, if God told that person right now to have me lead, what would I say? And, you know, over the span of 5 years, there was only one time where I actually had to say something on the spot. I taught public speaking, I taught philosophy, I taught various skills to high schoolers. And we were doing a presentation. We had high schoolers leading it. The problem was one of them kept freezing. And so a person that I taught with tapped me on the shoulder and said, "George, if they freeze again, go up there and get them." And you could just imagine in that moment that finally all of my preparation for something that usually never happens is happening. I was open-mouthed grinning, and I went up there and I wrapped my arm around him and said, "Here, we will never shame you for failing. The question is, what will you learn from it?" I want to tell you a story of a man and an old mule. A man was walking his old mule, but the mule fell in a large hole. The man looked at the mule, and though he was close to it, knew that it wasn't worth the cost to save it. So he got a couple young helpers to bring shovels and to shovel dirt and just bury the mule. The mule looked up at the old man, and he was proud. He thought, "My master is saving me again." As the dirt hit its back, it thought it was uncomfortable, so it shook its fur. As the dirt crowded around its feet, it thought it was uncomfortable, so it took a step. And it kept doing this until ultimately it stepped outside of that hole. You know, that was that day, but since then it's never happened again. And as I walked into this church, you know, I thought, If I was to be called up to speak, what would I say? And for the first time in my life, I decided this never happens. I'm not going to be called up to speak. And it only hit me when my father was introducing me and how we were going to change up the structure. I'm going to be called up to speak. Though I don't have a message for you, one thing I have studied recently was, in planning out my life for the next 15 years, how do I accomplish a lot in such a short amount of time? And I had began to, do a bit of research, but I couldn't help but see that a lot of the research was very negative. The economy is in the worst place it's ever been. Jobs are harder to find than ever. Because of private equity, things are more expensive than ever. If you look at studies finding how many people are both 30, married, and have a house, it's nearly nobody, that these goals are nigh impossible. And yet I couldn't help but look at that and think, on one hand, this makes me feel horrible, as though I don't even want to try. If the whole structure is this bad, how could I possibly succeed? But on another hand, studies do find that people who think they're luckier just so happen to be luckier. The thing is, there's two ways of viewing luck. You have one person who views luck optimistically. That person says that things will get better for me. And then you have another person who views luck hopefully. That person says, I can make things better for me. It is that second person who takes luck and takes their future and says, even if statistics say that things are bad, somebody has to win. And as far as I'm concerned, whoever that winner is, they've definitely got to try. That buried mule didn't just stand there and let the dirt bury them. They shimmied and they climbed and they shimmied and they climbed. They failed and failed again, but every time they learned something from it. And if you want to go to that rich state of being, you may fail and fail again, but every time you can learn something from it. In my introduction, my father mentioned how I was trying to get married soon. I wouldn't necessarily say soon, but at the very least, what I was doing was finding the person that I would most likely marry. Even going into this process, I found myself in a pretty negative position. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, for the last 4 years of my life, I haven't been in a relationship. I've been doing full-time dual enrollment at a community college, and if you've ever been, there's no community there. So I've been in high school, a place where I'm supposed to be around people my age, but I haven't been. I'm isolated. I don't know if I could get a girl if I wanted to. So I'm looking at college. This is the last time I'm gonna be around young folk, probably for the rest of my life. I can look at this two ways. On one hand, I'm chronically underprepared. I'm definitely gonna fail. But on another hand, if I do not try now, I will definitely never succeed in the future. And my first semester, I went into it. I approached over 50 girls. Can you guess how many numbers I got? 0. And you know how much hope you have to get rejected 50 times in a row? And still approach somebody else the 51st time? I'm a senior now, and I had made a list of everything that I wanted in a wife. It was a pretty long list, about 20 points. And I was thinking if I could find somebody with at least 80% of these things, then that was definitely the one. I ultimately ended up finding somebody who not just had 80%, they had everything bar 1 point, which was height. I personally wanted a girl who was 6'4", but that wasn't realistic. So today I can say it was because of the fact that I stood in that pit, barred of experience, rejected again and again, but shimmying and stepping, that I learned something from every instance that girl who seemed to be perfect except for her stature, I'm now in a relationship with. And it is to you as well that I have to say, you need hope. Hope that no matter how terrible the conditions of the world seem, no matter how poorly positioned you may feel, that your actions can make things better. And it's usually not immediate. You will fail again and again and again and think, if I failed before, what will be different now? But it is only when you keep trying, when you keep learning and changing your way, slightly correcting, that even if you were broke before, you may be rich tomorrow. Amen. Amen. Thank you, James.